do discussions between users. So if you are interested in further discussion of mobile photography after tonight, feel free to leave your email address on that sheet, and we will go ahead and send everybody out a notification. Other than that, Ashley, it's all yours.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I'm going to be leading your discussion today on mobile photography. Give you guys a little bit about me. I'm a double major in anthropology and photography here at Purdue University. This is my 5th and final year, so I know a little bit about it. Just a little. I'm from Philadelphia originally, and I've been living in downtown Lafayette for the past 2 years. So in the discussion today, we're going to talk about the basics of photography, so ways to enhance your images just by taking them in general. So we're going to talk about things like knowing your camera, things like lighting, composition, and then we'll get into the more things that are oriented towards the applications like filters and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get you guys started on the knowing your camera part. So everything I just said. And then in most of these today are actual pictures that I've taken with my phone and applied the filters to give you guys a better sense of when we go through the apps, these are the same things that you could be producing as well. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. There's only a couple that aren't, and you'll be able to tell which ones are which. So mainly the ones based on composition and the ones that aren't. But so the first thing I wanted to go through with you guys is knowing your camera. Obviously, there's a difference between iPhones and Androids, and they're all built with different parts. So your cameras are a little bit different. So I wanted to go ahead and show you guys the differences. One of the big things is megapixels, which has become an up-and-coming trend. They're getting higher and higher on cameras now. I remember when I had a Razr, we had like a 1 megapixel camera, and now we have camera phones that go up to 12, which is a huge difference. So to just give you guys a little show and tell of what the differences are, you can see different tonalities from different phones, and that's basically what happens when you have different camera parts. So like I know the iPhone 4 is C up here, and then the Droid is E. So you can see the iPhone is a little bit brighter, but generally still has the same color vibrance and things like that. The differences in the megapixels is iPhone 4 has 5, and then the Droid has 8. So that's a little bit different. And then this one down here is a basic point-and-shoot camera that has 12 megapixels. So there's not a lot of differences that you can see generally, but when you get closer into editing and looking at the pictures, you'll be able to see a little bit difference when you get closer in. So, flash. iPhone 4s just recently came out with a flash function on it. They didn't have it before on the iPhone 3s, and it's kind of changed the game a little bit. Because before you had very dark images at night and when you're out in places that were dark by nature, but now you have the opportunity to light it up with flash. That also means you need to know the difference, the way it's going to look when you use the flash. So I just wanted to go ahead and show you guys the difference between natural lighting and then flash lighting. So you can see a little bit of difference. This is a little softer, and then this has a harsh and dark edge that gives you more of a black and white, while this gives you a gray tonal range. So check that out. Next one, HDR. This is a new function that not a lot of people knew exactly what it was when it came out, because sometimes it's not as accurately described. So I went ahead and gave you guys a basic definition. HDR is high dynamic range. And essentially what it does is HDR photos instead combine multiple images at different exposures. So if you look at these, you can see that this one is a little bit more washed out. It was my original image, and then this is the HDR version. So what it does is it takes, I think the standard is 3 images, but it can go as high or more as you want, depending on what kind of camera you're using. The iPhone only does 3 and then blends them together, but you can do it differently in cameras. But it'll basically take the high point, the dark point, and the midpoint and mix them together to give you a really even exposure. So you can see the difference is not great, but it's enough that like you would want to use it because it looks a lot more rich in color. So same thing for this one. It just, you can see the yellow difference and how it got washed out here. It brings in detail. I would definitely suggest using it when you have the opportunity to, because you'll see a great, great difference in your images.
Question.
Yes?
Are there times where it makes sense to use the HDR or not use the HDR?
I would use it more so indoor than outdoor, only because when you're indoor, the lighting can change the image a lot. So I'll talk about lighting a little bit too, but like in this image, the lights down here flushed it out. So when you bring in the multiple exposures and darker, it pulls back in detail and gives you that rich color. So indoors in settings like this where the lights are very specific, I would definitely suggest using HDR. Any other questions?
But you wouldn't recommend just leaving it on?
Well, the thing with HDR is it actually takes a little bit more time and the files are bigger because of it. So if you are constantly clearing off your phone for situations like if you're outside during the day and you're taking a lot of pictures, if you go home that night and clear it off, I would suggest that you could, but if you're just using it for everyday quick snapshots of things, you wouldn't really need it as much. So, and like I said, it takes a little bit longer to process, so you won't be able to do that quick shoot, quick shoot, quick shoot. So, okay. All right, lighting. This is one of my favorite topics because you can do so much with lighting that is just available to you. So, like I explained to you guys earlier with the flash, the differences, I much more prefer natural lighting because it gives you a rich color that you'll get, like the color cast from different types of lights will come off differently. So in this, the only one I used flash for was the center one right here, and all the other ones are natural lighting. So this one, as you can see, because it has this giant flash here, but this is actually the sun. Door lighting for neon lights, TVs, alley lights, sunset, baseball game, sunset, and this was also a museum setting. So you can see that just being very, very conscientious and aware of your lighting can really change the image. If I had taken this picture at any other angle, it would have been very dark in my face, you wouldn't have been able to see it. So just being aware of where you're positioning your focal points and your subjects will really, really change the way the image comes out. So I'm always very aware of where the light is coming from. I always suggest moving around if you get the opportunity to, so you can see how the light's going to affect your subject differently. All right, composition. This is a little bit longer of a portion, but there's lots of different ways you can compose your images. Once you get familiar with some of these compositions and techniques, you'll be able to really, really focus in on like what you're trying to convey in your images or what you're trying to take a picture of, and it will really heighten everything that you're trying to do with photography when you decide to. It'll also give it a very natural balance to the scene, and you'll be able to draw in people leading through the image. Like you'll be able to figure out a way to lead them to the subject. After I go through a couple things. So, I didn't take this picture. It's a little bit different. So rule of thirds, this is one of the first things we learned in photography class so long ago. But basically, you'll see that it's divided into 9 equal segments, and this will help you line up and balance your image. So you can see the subject point here is hitting these 2 markers, and it's offset. So when you're using the rule of thirds, you want to make sure that your elements hit these lines. So a lot of times you see people take a picture directly in the center because they're getting the whole thing, and sometimes that does work, but a lot of the time when you're trying to do more artistic and you're trying to really push your image to convey something, you'll want to set it up so that you can see different things in the picture. So this is a really good example because you get a sense of the background, and then it leads through with the eye right here on the right side. So that's a good thing. Doing this will add balance and interest to your photo. So if you could imagine it right in the middle, it would be really clogging up the space. You wouldn't really get a grab for the background at all. But this gives you the option to look at everything, really take in the scene, and you'll get a much different feeling than if it was in the center. Okay. Balancing elements. So this would follow the rule of thirds as in it's in the 3 squares on the far right, but then if it was just this alone, it would look very, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it would look off, like there's too much negative space in the image. So what they've done here is inputted this hotel or apartment scene on the far left, which balances out the sides. The void makes it feel empty. It should balance the weight in the image, so what it's doing, so the way it would be if it was bigger, this is kind of balancing it so it reads through in a vertical perspective. So, leading lines. This is what I was talking about earlier about being able to lead to the subject of your image. These are some of my favorite types of photographs that come out. As you can see, most of these have a lot of pattern, perspective, and lines that lead you through the image. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory to be completely honest, but the way it works is that when you have lines that lead through the images, it takes the viewer through the entire image, which is always good because they get to see everything. If this had just been a line over here that was not balancing the image, you would only look over here because it would be leading straight through the line. But because the way it's prepared, you look through the entire image, which is awesome. And there's tons of different types of lines you can use. There's straight, diagonal, curved, zigzag, radial, and a lot of these can enhance the image. So this is kind of the same thing when you're taking an image. You want to go ahead and look at the perspective, take a second and see what you can do with rule of thirds, the composition of the image, leading lines. This will all enhance the way the viewer will look at it. Still in composition. Symmetry and patterns, also pretty self-explanatory. Symmetry and patterns is kind of the exception to the rule of thirds because what you can do is you can center focus these items, and obviously it's not off-center like the one I showed you with the lighthouse earlier, but the way it works is because it's so evenly balanced, it works a lot better for the image. You look at everything because of the way it's perfectly balanced. You can make it very eye-catching in situations that aren't necessarily really very eye-catching. This is a, I don't know what they're called, the electric towers that are usually fenced in, but obviously someone got underneath one. And it really leads you, using the leading lines through the center, but also the symmetry and the pattern makes it really work. If this would have been off-center just a little bit, it would have bugged you, because you would have just been like, why is it off-center just that ever so much? But because it's perfectly angled, you just feel very full when you look at it, which I always think is good. It introduces tension and focal point to the scene, so you know what you're looking at. Depth. If I'm going too fast, you guys can tell me to slow down. I want to make sure everybody's getting everything. I know I talk a little fast, so I'll slow down a little bit. The depth of an image can really change the entire perspective because photography is a 2D medium. So when you take these different portions and make it 3D, it really makes the depth seem so present because you have this really nice line right here that you can see this is the immediate foreground, and then you have the background which is farther away so you can't see it as well, but it really balances the image very well. You can create depth in a photo by including these objects in the foreground, middle ground, and then background, overlapping, which is also what they do here. It really adds layers to your images, so you can really get a sense for the whole scene, which I always enjoy. Framing. There's a lot of different ways you can frame images. Basically, what you can do with a lot of things is put one object in front of another and frame the image using it. A lot of times